tackling challenging questions, and we have more yet to go. Here's a classic. Is transition really going to change someone's distress if this is a mental health problem? If the experience of gender distress is a mental health problem rather than a genuine experience of gender outside of the norm, then transition isn't necessarily going to alleviate it, right? So we need to know, is the experience of gender outside of the norm, the distress that comes with it, is it implicitly a mental health problem, or is it a sort of consequence of an environment that's not as inclusive as we might like? Let's grab yourself a coffee. This one's a corker. Let's have a look. So, is this a mental health problem? There's a couple of really good studies that I'll draw on here. Denye's is good if you're interested. There is a reference list I'll make available to you. A link to it is absolutely gigantic. Denye's review is really good. Though the rate of mental health difficulties is significantly higher in the transgender and non-conforming population than the non-gender minority population, you can find Eisenberg, Pina, Reisner for studies in this field. The mental health of this population improves following gender confirming medical interventions, in many cases reaching normative values. The act of transition. There's in fact an amazing new study that was published just a few days ago that was looking at the sort of mental health outcomes following transition-related services, and we find that again, transition-related services support the mental health of the people engaged in them. What does this mean? Well, it means that being trans or being gender diverse generally isn't necessarily, I think we can say with some certainty, actually, I'm going to harden the language. Being trans, being gender diverse is not a mental health problem, but it does confer negative outcomes because we have a society that does not expect gender diverse people to exist. And that means that gender diverse people have to transgress norms and rules just by being. But it's the norms and rules that are the problem, not gender diverse folk. And by helping people to engage in transition-related services, we can support their mental health, in many cases reaching normative values. Wait, so is this a mental health problem? I have another really cool piece of research by Miller and Grollman just about 7 years ago. Using data from the largest survey of transgender adults in the United States, the National Transgender Discrimination Survey, over 4,000 participants, they find that substance use, attempted suicide, and other health-harming behaviors are higher in gender non-conforming trans people than those who are gender conforming. Now, this highlights that, again, it's not the act of being transgender, right? That is the problem here that causes a mental health problem. It is the norms that they have to transgress. Those who are gender non-conforming trans people have to transgress more of those norms by being in the world, right? If you're in a non-binary space, there is no toilet available to you in most places, apart from the disabled toilet. Whereas if you are binary transgender, much like myself, I can use the girls' toilet, though not everybody believes I should be in there. I generally do go in there because it's where I'm going to pee. Come on, God damn it. It's where I'm going to go. Whereas, gender non-conforming folk don't have spaces available to them in the same way. So they have to transgress more norms, more rules just by being in the world. And that has negative mental health consequences. And these studies are really cool. It turns out that the act of transition is about seeking validation of one's gender identity from within and without. And that by providing that validation, we can simply alleviate a lot of distress for this community. It's not just about transition. It's also about, in fact, it's probably more about society making room for gender diverse folk to exist in the world. Validation turns out to be really important. Data from a community cohort sample of 129 transgender and gender non-conforming youth from 3 US cities highlighted that after adjusting for personal characteristics and social support, chosen name use in more contexts, just chosen name use in more contexts, was associated with lower depression, suicidal ideation, and suicidal behavior, and lower rates of anxiety and depression. Just chosen name use. That's all it took. So all we need, what this describes is that, as we suspected, as we sort of highlight earlier on, gender diverse folk are not experiencing mental health problems as a consequence of their gender diversity, but they are experiencing mental health consequences as a consequence of a society that does not allow them to exist easily within it. So our job fundamentally is just to use the chosen name and the pronouns that are right for the person, to check out with them, whatever that might be, and then to kind of get systems and structures that are binarized out of the way to make it so that binary choices aren't so frequently inevitable. When I go to the GP surgery and I log in, the first thing it asks me, are you male or female? As though those are the only two experiences that are valid in the world. We just need to audit what we do, everything that we do. We need people in positions of responsibility to audit those systems to make sure that these binary choices aren't so frequently inevitable. When we come back, we have one last question to face down, and boy, is it a corker. Look forward to seeing you in the next one.